I think that, may I speak?
Yes, please, Mike.
I think
Back,
the challenge with that is
Mike, come up and join the table.
We're in, these are flex buildings, and so the idea of us having a call center, for example, is unlikely.
Right.
But most often these are distribution type manufacturing type businesses that are coming here, and their employees are, between 3 and 5, 3 to 10, something like that. And so we're not going to have necessarily a high amount of employees coming here, but those are the types of businesses that come to this type of building.
Okay, I guess we'll wait and see, because I mean, there are people who, as I look at the business parks across Salt Lake, I used to travel them all the time at my last job, and some of them have 5 people in the building, and some of them will have 30. It's just the nature. It depends on the nature of that warehouse and what
Absolutely.
they do. If they're like a fulfillment center, they need and there's more jobs. I realize that you're not likely to make that into a call center. It could happen, but not very likely. But I just think that if there's somebody that comes in with a really unappealing offer, I would reserve that right.
At the same time, I think that getting the buildings filled is better than empty.
I agree.
Any day. And we want you to be successful. We want you to stay. We want those buildings to not be unoccupied.
In this kind of a situation, what is the impact on the existing tenants? They don't get a rebate, right?
But at the same time, if it helps you to stay viable, I'm all for helping. You're in the right zone to do it and to help you to stay viable.
Yeah, at the same time,
that's why we wanted you to be here in the first place.
At the same time, they are invested. They have a contract. They've got their, they came in and agreed to a rate. They put in the investment of the fit out, the internal fit out.
We're just trying to make it cheaper for someone to come here and start up.
Because once they've started, they're invested, and pulling out has a cost as well.
Now tell me where that money is coming from. Is that in just decreased fees, or is that actually money coming out of our coffers?
So the way these work, do you want to explain that?
I'd be happy to, sure. I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, this is your wheelhouse.
Okay.
So
okay.
We're talking property taxes.
Okay.
So EDA is set up essentially as a diversion tool, and it was triggered in, I believe it was 2014. And so it's for 15 years, 80% of the property taxes go to the RDA board. And so before that was set up, we had to get the buy-in of the mosquito abatement and the school district and all those guys. And so for 15 years, 80% of all of that property tax goes to the RDAs. And the RDA already does have some financial commitments, but there's also room to do some negotiations. So
yeah, one thing that needs to be clarified, if this is the type of thing you're interested in, that was the first point we need to talk about, and
yes.
Under what conditions.
For me.
There is you have to make. We probably will have to talk to Ninigrit based on the contract of the EDA, and as far as how some of the money gets diverted over. So.
And one thing to go along with that explanation is that because agriculture got very little tax money for those entities anyway, so they're like, okay, if we can develop it, then we will get tax monies, so we're willing to divert it for a while.
And if nobody's a tenant, then we don't get that tax. So yeah.
Right.
But I do want it
just
there
so
to
you're
be
wondering why I don't know anything. It's
You're
because
fine.
I'm new.
That's totally
These
fine.
are
There's a
good
lot to
questions,
cover.
because if you look at, they take the conditions of the property and assumption of base value agriculture,
Right.
how much property tax is that bringing in, and then they evaluate, okay, if we create this tool and assume XYZ is built, at the end of the thing, how much is this going to be bringing in? So
Right.
even the school district and the mosquito abatement, they're looking at like, okay, well I could get this, or I could get this after we give them a little bit of money to work with.
Right. We're getting 0 already, so
But
10
I do want there to be a base incentive, and I do want to increase the incentive for additional employees, because I think that is something that we
Need to be on-premise employees.
Yeah.
Because you can say, well, my wife and my husband, my children are employees, so it'd be important
I'm
to say
fine
they
with the base that only improves based on employee counts.
Yeah, that was our intent to
It
let
is.
you meet Michael, familiarize yourself with some of their needs, and we don't have to formulate an exact structure right now, but.
I think there's.
But we
a-
do need to hurry.
Yeah.
We're in a tough spot right now.
How do we expect
And-
this will change based
And we
on
need to make it.
the introduction of the West Davis corridor? I know it's not going all the way to 193 yet. Why is this called
It,
the Avenue?
it probably just meet Mike's timeline.
Yeah, I'm like I said, we can do this now. I'm just curious if we think that, and I feel like this is going to improve once the freeway connects to 193.
Yeah.
It probably
It
will.
probably
And
will,
so
but
this-
that's,
So how
But we
many
have to
years
get
down
in
the
there.
road is
I
that?
mean, really, it's
Four.
four minutes away from I-15, right?
Right.
But so it's not a
It's
big
probably
deal.
closer to
Either
I-15
way.
than
Right.
it ever will be to West Davis corridor.
it'll be both, I mean.
But having both accesses will be help.
Certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Okay. But no, I think this is a good thing to do.
So is everybody on board with that type of
Yes.
program?
That
I
type
support
of
it
thing.
with
Okay.
some
Yes.
flexibility.
Okay.
Totally support it.
So we'll put that together.
And there could be reasons, I just want you to say, that depending on the business, if the business is like high sales volume, that generates us some sales tax as well. So
Sure.
Yeah.
maybe that's a different offset if we don't have a lot of employees, but they are a high volume organization or.
Yeah.
And I have to say this just because everyone always asks me, what type of incentive would we need to put a Costco in one of these areas?
About $1 trillion.
Yeah.
I don't think you're correct.
But I'm close.
Well, first of all, Costco couldn't go into his establishment.
No, not in there.
But in one of these zones.
But Noah's already showed us a picture that a Costco would fit over there because he put an overlay of South Ogden's Costco
Costco.
on some of those properties over there.
There's a lot of land over there.
Right.
We want to be strategic about
Where?
what happens on the corridor, because we're really building that whole corridor up.
Right.
We could fit a few Costco's, that's a lot of land over
That's
there.
what I'm saying.
I
Is
think
I want
Costco
to understand what that
right
incentive
there.
would look like, and I'm actually being serious.
Yeah,
They're
only
not.
Costco.
Well, first you've got to have
This isn't on
Costco
the
that's
agenda,
interested,
though,
because
so-
right now they're not.
You don't know that.
I wanna
I'd like to
teach
bring
him
us
that.
back to
Spring
the-
break.
Okay, coming back to it. I thought we already made a decision. That's why I was
Yeah.
Well, that's
diverting.
one decision.
That's one
Yeah.
decision.
Okay.
We've got-
Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on then.
So, all right, so we'll put that together. We'll come back to you with that. The other issue is a kind of a combined issue of RDA and City Council hat. So,
Okay.
the Planning Commission will be holding a public hearing on a zoning amendment to not allow storage units in the industrial
So,
zone.
Why?
Or is it business park? They want to change it to business
Be
park.
Changing the zoning from industrial to business park, because business park doesn't allow storage.
Yes, so, but really, the general plan says it's business park, and it's never been changed. And so, the timing of such is that, it's, the planning commission was looking at general plan, and let's look at,
Why would we not do this in conjunction with Vision 2020 or 2050?
We could. The issue at hand for Mike is he in his financial prospectus and everything, he needs to sell the vacant land that's there. And so there's a discussion gonna happen with the planning commission as to whether he can sell
To a storage unit.
storage unit, so that storage units could locate in the EDA. There's a policy question here as to whether a storage unit should be in the EDA because it's not necessarily job creation
Right.
oriented.
However,
But yeah.
they would split the land and put frontage a car dealership on the frontage of 193 and storage units back behind it. So you would have the sales tax off of that particular project.
Car dealership, are you?
I think 193 is a good spot for a car dealership.
Is that in writing? That's interesting information there.
I mean, that's what they've told me.
That's what they're telling me.
So this proposed schedule is, planning commission will hold a public hearing on the 19th, then we'll come back to you guys So tonight, we're not deciding whether or not we should change the zone or anything
We're
like
saying,
that.
you know.
But we wanted to talk about that as far as EDA, and certain assumptions were made when the EDA was created based off of what the valuation of the buildings, based off of, you know, how much property tax that was going to divert. So there's property tax, there's sales tax, there's kind of those three major points that we're talking about. So we're talking about architecture and how does it look and feel as you drive down 193. Okay, you're talking about the number of jobs that these different businesses provide. And number three, you're talking about the density of the property tax that things return as far as taxable value.
And the general plan and seeing whether now is the time for the current zoning to coincide with our general plan. And all of this comes to a head as, you know, this is a decision-making point for the city as to where they want to go with that. So.
Now, my understanding, if it moves to a business park zone, my project really doesn't fit inside a permitted use inside that zone. Same with the gas station on the corner. So therefore, that I'm not sure that that's the right zoning either.
And it may not be. It may not be.
That's why we have your buildings would fit in the. I mean, you're essentially a business park, so the buildings that you built would be business park.
But I think it only calls for light manufacturing as part of a really an office use, whereas, you know, we will have manufacturing that definitely could come in there. So that, you know, tenants from coming to that zone.
But that is a good point, and I agree 100%. The business park zone language could need some future tweaking to make it.
Well, we could also determine, and
We do.
I'm not saying that we're making this determination tonight, but we could also determine that while the general plan says business park, we've in fact let it become commercial, and maybe we change the general plan rather than the zone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying that both of those options are open.
Yeah, and I think the point here, and you know, and the reason we encourage the planning commission to consider this and put it on the agenda is that the discussion just needs to be had.
Yeah.
Because now's the time to make the decision. So let's discuss it. It may not be the right thing to do, and it may be better to leave it as it is. We don't know, but the discussion needs to be had.
The first issue, I'm more than happy to entertain any proposals to incentivize somebody to fill up the buildings that are there. Those being filled will only make the property around it more attractive. So
Right.
I'm for that. The other one, I kind of feel like we have to wait until see what the planning commission says. I don't know that we can really make that call before we get
Yeah.
more
No.
input.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
This is more of just information, and
FYI
we wanted
grade.
to give
Yeah.
Mike a chance to talk about where he is. I don't know if you want to give him any more time, but we just wanted you to make sure you knew Mike and he can explain what his situation is.
So thank you for your willingness to help with the existing buildings. Again, I'm trying to raise some capital to make sure we have a growing concern with those buildings going forward, and hence the sale. We would love to continue on with our buildings, I'll be honest with you, but my investors aren't going to do it because we haven't filled.
Right.
And so that puts us in a really tough spot
Sure.
with loans coming due and so forth. And so that's the reason why we've looked to sell that land. And so I guess I'll leave it at that. We'll go to planning commission and then we'll address it from there.
Okay.
So thank you.
I wish we could help you make those other things viable, but I understand the timeline probably isn't
Yeah.
gonna work.
But thank you for reaching out to us. I'm
Yeah,
glad we were
no
able to
thanks. And I
collaborate.
know
We want this to be a joint effort.
this will come to a head here in the next couple of weeks, I know, but if there's a way to consider it and look at it, and if there's a way to make their plan work, then I would hope that you would at least consider it before just throwing it out the
Yeah.
door. I was going to come up with another. Yeah. All right. Anything else for me before I leave? Okay. Thank you.
Stay in
Appreciate your
contact.
time.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have on the agenda to discuss the master plan, Parks master plan. Krista, you're in the hot seat.
I guess.
Before Cresta gets started, you can go ahead and get set up there.
Do you have your?
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, because I remember I couldn't.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
If you can turn
Um,
on the TV. Jordan,
Oh,
Vanna, whichever you want to be.
Remote hog.
Moat. Oh, they call me Moat Hog. Got it. Just to stay by me doesn't make me the.
Moat hog.
Do you want me to pick a input, or are we good? I'm.
Yeah, I'm gonna need that
Give that to.
connection.
Which this one?
Yes, and that's right by you too.
Well, you know, I
So-
am the tech guy.
You are.
Except you don't know how to run remote.
Yeah, well, I'm doing two things at a time. Which one do you want? PC input? What are you looking for?
We're good. Yeah, we got it.
I don't feel like we are good. PC input is what you want?
It's not about your feelings, dear.
Oh, for crying out loud! Somebody tell me what input it is. I'm just gonna start picking them at random.
I have a hard time being PC, so I think you want my input.
So, Chris is gonna, what we like to do here on this issue is let Chris to run through a quick PowerPoint. There's only like 6 or 8 slides. And then let you discuss the plan and really, you know, at this point, it's a draft plan from the Park Advisory Committee, and now it's on your table to or just approve, whatever you, it's your document now. So
just before you get going, did everyone see my email?
Just now did. I didn't see it earlier.
Just before.
I saw, but you're
But
gonna.
I didn't get it read.
You're gonna have to.
You'll have to
What's
explain
that?
what's
Yeah.
different.
We didn't have time to read it. But
I can't
applaud
believe you
your
guys
effort.
weren't waiting with bated
Waiting
breath,
to our
hoping that
thing.
I would
Let's see
send
if
something.
an email comes
But
through.
I
So
really
there's this
appreciate the
thing of
effort. I do.
Feeding children that takes priority, so.
What? They're
All
big
right.
enough to feed themselves.
It's the
You'd be
first one's out there.
surprised.
Obviously, we're here to discuss the
Okay.
Parks Master Plan. And last time we met, we decided that the Parks Master Plan is a guiding document that's gonna help
Mhm.
for the of our parks.
Sure.
So everybody's in agreement of that, right? Okay.
Yes.
So the next things we wanted to talk about is talking points on what the purpose of. Dave asked, what's the purpose? So we're gonna give you a purpose.
Okay, give me a
Okay?
purpose.
The first one is the classification system. We have created a classification system for the parks and open space. And this helps us set a baseline, as you can see, like the 3 acres up there. It helps us set a baseline for the parks to help us to be able to designate and identify
I
what
left that
type of
in.
park and amenities that you have. And as you read through that, you probably picked out and saw
Mhm.
exactly. And you can change that if that's not what you guys are thinking. One of the big things when it was first put together is remember, I know for Chad and I, pocket parks we're not a big fan of those.
No.
Little half-acre, 1-acre parks. So, you know, your neighborhood park is gonna be your 3 to 12 acres. A linear park is 1 to 10. Community parks are your 13 to 50. And as you guys probably noticed, the regional park we're thinking of could actually fall under the community park or a regional park, because a regional park is 50 acres plus. So sometimes these parks, the amenities that are in them is what's gonna give you your classification. You have your special use, which is your community center and the equestrian park. And just so your special use facilities, they are actually included in our impact fee acreage, right, Brody?
the
Yeah.
special
The special
use
use.
facilities are, the special use areas are not.
Are not. So your entryways in the cemetery, those are not factored in.
Is that something we have the ability to change? Or is that
I
an
don't know
outside?
yet, but for purposes of this plan, you can include that if you want.
Okay.
I don't know if you can include it when we go
For
to the
purpose of
impact fee.
impact fee.
Yeah, so.
And that's one of
It
the
probably
things.
would be best for us to be consistent with can do there. But honestly, if we have the ability to declare that a use, I think it is. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't.
And yeah, however you want, if you wanna just be consistent with what's allowed under the impact fee analysis, we can do that. You can, if you feel like those types of areas count as parks and open space
So
to the benefit of our citizens, you can count that.
I think the cemetery at a minimum should qualify, because a lot of people go there because it is a peaceful place where they can spend time with family.
Well, and it's a different kind of
But at the same time, it's
mental health recreation.
Yeah, it's somewhere where people go and spend time, and
Yeah.
it is a peaceful place
And
with
yeah.
trees and grass and a beautiful area that we spend a lot of time on to make sure it is a beautiful and welcoming place.
And the expectation is that we're gonna keep it up like a park.
Exactly.
So the charge to the city
Perhaps not the
is to
turf
treat it that
in
way.
that.
Well, maybe not turf, but you know, that we get a
Yeah.
lot of complaints about whether it's kept
They
up.
want it
and-
better.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's
that,
what Chad-
again, that'd be my point, that they're using it in that way.
Yeah, one,
And their
one,
expectation is that.
one thing I don't know how that, and maybe Paul knows, how that translates into the impact fees, cause your cemetery is also supported by fees
Good
and that
point.
sort of thing, but.
So generally with the impact fees, the question is gonna be, how did you acquire it? So if it was like the entry monuments, those are dedicated to us, and we actually the citizens didn't expend anything. to
I don't
acquire
think the
them.
entryways could be counted.
No,
And the
not
cemetery, I
entryways.
believe, was, remember the history, I think it was donated to the city also.
Well,
So
part of
if
it-
there was no acquisition costs by the city, then you generally can't count
Okay.
it for it.
But you
Okay.
say it's supported by fees. I admit they buy the plot, but that fee does not support that park
The
in
maintenance
perpetuity.
of it is an enormous expense that is put on the city.
If we had to try and
It's not-
cover that
impact
by.
fees look at acquisition and
Okay,
development,
so,
not maintenance.
so for our possible expansion, because that was an acquisition, then that portion could be,
Possibly, yeah.
okay.
That
Except,
would
except
come
it's not in
next.
our city, which
Yeah.
might be a problem.
Yeah.
Oh, well, once we put some thoughts there, I don't think they'll want it anymore.
I would argue that the whole thing would count, but yeah, I'll let Paul help
So,
us
so
figure
for the
that out.
purposes of providing
But back to
parks
the-
and open space to
Mhm.
your residents, you can decide what's parks and what's not.
Right.
It's
Okay.
just a matter of how
It's a
that,
matter of impact.
how that
fees.
translates into impact fees. We can deal with that later.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's what the
And in
consultants
fact,
are for.
I believe when we started this discussion with the advisory board, I don't think trails were included in our
That is
acreage.
correct.
They
I
are.
mean,
But is
And then
now.
I know it is
also
now,
the,
but it wasn't.
It
Yeah.
wasn't, and then also some of our basins which are used a lot of times for stuff, then
right,
were
and
not
that's a
being used
definition that I saw in there that I think has to be changed. The idea that, I get that we don't want it to be wet all the time, but just because it's depressed, just because it's not, I mean, we're ruling out a lot of usable space that we
Right, so we
use.
decided to add that in.
Cause
Yeah.
we overkill.
Yeah, that,
You can only go
yeah.
one direction, right?
I think the
Yeah.
park
It's
advisory
not.
committee.
I don't think so, I mean, I'm gonna argue for the other, because, like, consider Canterbury North. Technically, it's not big enough to have a game in, but lots of people have activities there.
We classify
we did.
Canterbury North.
You
Yes.
do, as a
Mhm.
park.
If
But
it was
something
used.
like, what's one of the ones, Chad, that
But I-
we would not?
Trailside.
Trailside we
Yeah.
do, we classify
Like
trailside.
Cook
Cook Country Cove.
Or Country Gardens, those are some detention basins that.
They can.
It's really hard to program, I mean, you might be able to go walk a dog.
I didn't realize it was big enough to call a park,
So,
but.
but I
It's
guess
not, it's a-
to get the point of the slide, you're
We-
saying
we
the plan
maintain it.
should define a classification system, and I agree.
Yes. Yeah, that's what a plan should do.
I
isn't
agree.
it?
Brody, did you have something you wanted to add there?
Well, I think what the park advisory committee landed on, if I'm not mistaken, was if it's a detention basin, I think we decided of an acre or larger,
Right,
then it would be
It's
considered
usable.
open space that we counted.
that's where we landed.
Because it had to be maintained by the city anyway.
Right,
And
and
I
also
guess-
that-
It has value.
So
And
I guess
historical use too.
for purposes of us going forward, probably at some point, we ought to see a map that has all these detention basins on it. We kinda have a feel of what we're because if we have 40 I don't really know how many detention basins we have, cause I haven't sat around and counted them all. I know which ones are big enough to be parks,
Yeah.
because I have counted those, but I think we kinda ought to have a feel for
There's
what,
6 is what you said.
just 6?
That are-
grass.
That have grass.
So,
Grass.
so give
That
us
are
a
not-
look at those, and then I'll kinda weigh in what I feel like.
I've got
Okay,
that
but I
down.
agree with this slide.
Okay, great. See, good. The next one that you need.
I don't.
You don't agree with the clarification, the classification?
No, I don't agree.
You can,
I don't agree that we have defined them well enough yet, but.
okay, we can talk about that.
No, so actually in the one I sent out, I kept these in there, and I actually put a few of them that need some clarification.
Okay.
Because the linear park had some uses in there that I don't think we're gonna have. Like are we gonna put horseshoes in our
But-
linear park?
But you could. And what the plan is telling you what you can do. It's not telling you what you have to do.
I feel like a plan is
amending
telling
you
me
can
what
have.
what I am going to attempt to do.
And I feel like anything that we pass as a plan, somebody's gonna come back and say, see, you planned it, you owe me this.
Yeah, where's my horseshoes in my linear
Yeah,
park?
and so those are
Your
kind of
plan
things
is
that.
whatever you say your plan is.
And I agree,
So-
and that's why.
So I think that it needs
So
to
we
be
can-
far, in fact, for my opinion, let's take the first one on the list, which was neighborhood parks. I feel like we have talked before about what a standard should be for the park. That I think should be in here.
I put that in my draft.
Okay, but we've talked about it at
It's
this
exciting.
table. But we have like a minimum standard pavilion, and the fact that all neighborhood parks should eventually have a pavilion. Now, at the same time, I think we need to allow for an exemption, because if somebody says, well, this park, it just doesn't work. If we determined that was the case, okay. But for the most part, our standard is, and the reason that would be, if a developer comes in and says, well, I'm gonna build a park in my development for you, then you just have to say it has to have a pavilion, has to have a playground, has to have one other feature somewhere in there, because those were some of the requirements that we
Right.
said means it's a park. But we have to, I think we should be that specific, because that's a plan.
Agreed.
Not just it can have, that's not a plan.
Let's let Cresta get through her slides, and then let's actually work on the document.
Yeah,
Because
so
I really would like just to mine the plan part of of the document that I sent out is only about 8 pages. I think we can get through
I
it
like
fairly
that.
quickly. And I put the entire study in the appendix, and it just goes through and says this is what we want in our parks, and it's an idea, it's a guiding document. I even put Wi-Fi future. You'll see it in there. And
We want that too.
and that's what I'm saying is that's the kind of things I want in here
Right.
of what services we want to provide in each of our parks, and then let that be the plan and let this data support that. But
Yeah.
I don't like how our plan is a
I don't
survey.
like that either. The
Is a
plan-
survey
survey is
response.
not a
Like
plan.
the
It's
plan
not.
is-
It
It
was-
is.
But it was supposed to be in the appendix. That's what we discussed.
it is in the
It is in the
appendix.
So it
appendix.
is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's referred to in all the plan
Well,
as
the-
the
the-
subject, or the survey told us this and therefore it's true. I disagree.
So
I don't
let's-
think that something that was 5 years old collected data is necessarily true today.
But let's go through your slides, and I would like to just pull mine up and just go through it quickly. And you guys can either throw it out or say let's start use that as a starting point.
So the way we can structure this conversation, we've got.
Let me give you the economy of time. I'm gonna call this discussion at 8:30.
So we've got 5 subjects, and we'd like to address those 5 subjects one at a time after Crest is done.
All right.
Like you said, document.
Okay.
Like we'll be talking about the text.
Okay.
Okay. So
So
the
let's start
purpose
with
of the
my
plan number
text.
2 is that the plan helps us to establish how much supply we currently have. And as you guys can see, the current average is 3.95 acres per 1,000 and dropping because that means we're growing and we continue to grow. The average you can see is 4 to 6 acres.
I don't think that should be in our plan. I agree that we can say our current acreage is 3.95,
Well, what
and we
I'm-
can say our proposed.
But what I'm saying to you is that's what we have right now. But the proposed, if you vote what the proposed would be, that's what it'll be. It won't
That's
be the
already per
3.95.
ordinance.
No,
And that's
per-
the point, is
it's
that that's
3
covered by an ordinance.
The ordinance is
It shouldn't
4.95.
necessarily be reflected in the plan, because the
And so-
ordinance dictates that.
Yes.
So your plan will tell you what you want it to be.
Mhm.
Your ordinance will tell you what it has to be.
But our ordinance says 4.95 currently, and we are
And-
under.
And
Correct.
part of the problem, let's let you get.
So-
through we'll-
And then the plan also looked at where the parks are located and then made the determination that 70% is being served and 30% are underserved. And I know that we have to update some maps because we had some
'Cause we
extra
have some
things.
roads
and
go
we're,
through.
we're in the process of doing that, but right now that's what it's saying to us.
So in the one I did, I actually put I would like where feasible. I'd like instead of saying just some areas are underserved, I would like to try and say that everybody has a park within walking distance, and I said that is a mile or less. And we won't always be able to attain that, but I think that's a goal that we should set.
Well, I think it does say that, it just says a half mile, and I don't think that's necessarily realistic, because there are some outlying areas that will never that.
It says a
Okay.
half mile for neighborhood parks and
Right.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
what
a
I-
mile
that's
for
what I-
large
Has to
parks.
go.
Yeah.
It's okay. And then number 3, the plan establishes the future parkland that's needed. So you can see here that our build out for low and what it is. And if we're at the 4.95 acres, in the low estimate, we're gonna need close to 100 acres still. We need
Is that in addition to what we own for the regional
Mhm.
park?
No.
No.
No, that's finishing.
That's,
So that's
that's finishing it so
that's
that it's
area we
actually
need to
people
finish.
could, yes.
See,
Okay.
we have 99.43 acres right now, or it's 83 acres right now that are undeveloped.
But we still need them to make it in our plan is what we're saying. Like
Right.
he can't be undeveloped.
Yeah,
So,
undeveloped doesn't count.
yeah, so.
I
you're-
get it,
you're-
but
yeah.
again, the point is, I don't want
We've
this
already
document to be a
acquired it.
directive to go and buy land when we can't afford to develop. Our emphasis should be develop what we have before it should be acquire more land.
Right, and this plan is just to tell you what is needed.
Yep.
It's not gonna, it doesn't tell you have to go buy it.
Okay.
The way that it's written
But if
now,
you're-
it says you're supposed to go buy
But
it.
if you're looking at our high estimate, then that 4.95, you are looking that you're gonna have to buy some land if that's what you're gonna wanna go put in the plan,
Okay.
right? So, okay, number 4, is the plan recommends what type of parks, again, you know, the active versus passive. And right now, your existing is 60 and your 40% is passive. The proposed is 70 and 30.
And the cemetery would actually increase the passive.
Mm-hmm. It could if you put that in there. And the reason why
don't
you
know-
guys
why
wanted
does
to,
this have to be in there?
It's just talking about having a balance of trails versus, because some people want trails and other people want scheduled parks like ball fields and such.
Yeah, it's a
So
different product.
And,
yeah.
and different
Okay.
people like different things, so it's pretty much okay, let's do percentage so that we can represent both sides of what's desired.
To the question, why is it even in there? They're active and passive people. You can go to an active park and be a passive person. You can go to a passive park and be active along whatever space that you can find in there. I get it that you're, yeah, we're not playing Frisbee in the cemetery, but again, the point being, why is that dictated by the plan? Because I kind of feel like we do this, we get what we think we can get. I mean, we build what we think is most needed. What at the time we build things out and we produce things, we don't go back and say, oops, we're a few percentages off, we have to now change, or we have to build something or redevelop something. So I kind of feel like this isn't something that we have to dedicate as our plan.
Just take out some benches.
But I do think that it gives you direction on, okay, maybe we have a park in this area. We've just finished the regional park. It's awesome. It's all scheduled. Now we've got a huge proportion of our parks in active that can be scheduled out. Let's maybe make some of these other more nature parks, passive parks, don't put as much stuff into it.
So you know, and a lot of it is you
It's just
you
to help
can't
guide the future.
you can't go to an active park and be passive during the times where a lot of people are wanting to be in a park because they're programmed. And so I think what it's designed to do is just sort of diversify your portfolio of park space.
So you're saying like a
We will
picnic park
always,
is a passive
if it's
park.
possible
Yeah.
to be
It's
active,
typically not
Jensen's passive.
reservable. Yeah.
Jensen is a passive park.
legacy park
But there
is
are people
passive.
who will go and find areas big enough to be active in a passive park. The trails, they'll play in the open space, they'll have, again.
I
my
don't think
point
it's
is-
that literal though. I think it's more programmable versus
Right.
non-programmable.
Maybe if
Doesn't
you
matter
need
what
to
you're
change the
actually
verse,
doing,
the
but
yeah.
words,
You
the
can.
verbs.
It's
Okay.
more about reserving it and programming
Programming.
recreation on it.
The bottom line is we have such a need for our rec programs. We're always going to be building active parks over passive parks. We've got
Yeah.
Jensen, which almost by itself takes up the percentage that we're asking for. So are we saying we'll never build another?
No, that's why
Passive
we
park.
upped that from 60
Yes,
to 70.
and that's why we changed it, and then also because of the fact that we do believe that the state will help us to build some nature trails along the border of Salt Lake, and so therefore, we're gonna put more of our efforts into programmable parks rather than into necessarily the nature trails. Those will come on naturally. We change the active to a higher percentage than what's already in there. So
Well,
it's
didn't I
just a
just say
changeable
that
thing.
Jensen covers about 30% anyway? If we built out everything
don't
we
know.
had, Jensen almost covers that by itself.
Well, it would be less than that as we grow, but
And as-
the you know, what the value of doing this, and you don't have to do it, but the value of doing it is, okay, when you do acquire parkland in the future, there's going to be a debate on what to build.
Right.
If you've pre-agreed on what you need, then you kind of know what you're going to build.
I'm suggesting we know what we're going to build.
But every park could have this
Future
mix.
councils.
Like you can just have parts of an active park that are not programmed.
Right, but if that's not there, if that mix isn't there, then you get a piece of land and it comes before a city council. Maybe not this one. It might be 5 years in the future.
I think this is dangerous mumbo jumbo.
And people will just debate on what to do, and you're gonna.
That's what I don't want to have happen. Is a future city council say 30% of my park has to be passive, because if we built, like, say, a sports complex, we determined because it's near Jensen Nature Park, which is 100% passive, we don't need any of that actually be passive. So my point is, I don't want this to be future interpreted as I now have to incorporate elements. What if I said I have to have a nature trail in this park, so it takes away 2 soccer fields because
Then
I
say
had?
that.
Yeah, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So I don't want this to be something that points people to that thinking. I just as soon leave it out.
I don't look at this plan as literal as you are. I don't think, because this is more guidelines.
So should we put ish after all of them?
People always come back to something and say that it
But it's
passed
not-
as an ordinance
But you-
or it's your
It's
plan.
not an ordinance,
You
though.
have to do it.
I think you also have to trust people are smart enough to understand what an active park is and what a passive park is. They are smart enough to know.
But they're all dual purpose.
Yeah,
Not
this doesn't
necessarily.
have to be
No,
said.
I mean, a lot of them are.
I
Not
think the
necessarily.
more things that, if we determine it doesn't need to be said and we leave it out, we're better off.
So is Centennial a passive park or an active park?
That's a good question.
But I think it's really important to have a plan.
I just want someone to tell me that.
I would-
See, and that's the question, is
I would
somebody
call it a
gonna come?
passive park.
You'd call it a passive park, even though there
Well,
was
we
a splash
can't,
pad
So
but
or
we can't
playground?
program in it, we don't
We're not
program in it, I guess we're
programming
looking
We
at,
haven't
we're not.
passed.
So if we need to change the definitions of programmable for our sports programs, and then the rest of it for being passive, whoever comes and goes for the general population use, we can change those words if that's what the hang up is. It's not a big deal.
But now am I saying, nope, sorry, you can't put a soccer game on that because it's not
a passive
programmable.
space,
It's a
yeah.
passive space.
No,
Yeah.
because.
I don't think. I
Because
think
we have
that's-
football
you-
practice at Trailside, even though
Yeah,
it's
you,
not
and
a,
you can, it's not saying
playable
that you
space.
can't put,
We're
it's
talking
not
about
saying
the
that you
primary
can't.
use.
Yeah, it's not saying you can't go and use a
So
soccer field there or a football.
a softball field is primarily a softball field.
Agreed.
But you can go throw a frisbee on it,
Sure. I can also have a picnic on the
on second base, right?
Yeah.
Brody likes to get to second base, you're still chief nut.
Okay, last slide, and this is gonna be really fast, because
Or
the
is
plan,
it?
it is, because it's not a hard one. The plan recommends that we put a capital improvement program together, which we are already in the progress. Is that the word? Yes? We're already in progress. In process of doing that. You guys saw that in the retreat, so, but when 5 years ago when they put this plan together, these guys walked around each park and took pictures of amenities. It helps to see what needs to be replaced and what needs to.
That's awesome.
So. See, that one was a fast slide.
Ta-da!
It was a good one.
There you go.
Thank you.
So
Thank
it
you.
So those are
recommends a
progress.
capital improvement program, which we're doing.
Yes.
Okay.
Now the time is yours.
Ta-da.
So where do we want to start?
I think, go ahead.
I
Go ahead,
think you
Jordan.
want to start in defining your classifications and what is a park and what is a neighborhood park.
So let's pull up. Is everyone okay?
Do we wanna go to yours?
Do you want to go to? I asked for your opinion. I personally want to start with mine because it's kind of awesome. But that's my opinion. You may not share that. And since you haven't looked at it, like I said, it's only about, the plan itself is only about 8 to 10 pages.
I like that.
Well,
And
so,
because I feel like we don't, and one of those pages is all of these park definitions. I kept all of that in there verbatim because I thought that would be a discussion point. But just open up, and if you want to spend 2 minutes and just scan through it,
I don't, and here's why.
you're a jerk.
No, would you let me?
I'm just kidding, Dave.
I am so glad that you did this, and I want to be excited about it. The only thing is I don't want to just scan through it and talk about it. I want to work with it.
Okay.
And I'm okay. We can take it as we go, but I don't, what I'm trying to say is I don't want to just put it off as, I'll just skim through it and we'll go from that. I want to actually dig in deep. So
I guess I just want you to open it, since I know you guys haven't seen it yet.
no, I haven't.
Just tell me if you're okay with this as a starting point. I guess when I say skim through it, just say, is this look like an acceptable starting point?
Really quick, how do you want us to open this so that we don't have type over type?
It's
only on that one portion.
only on that one portion? Okay.
That I can see.
That's good.
Yeah.
If
There's
you
that
if you
first
have
page.
Word on your
open it in Word,
you can open it in Word.
and then you can actually hide
Oh, yeah,
changes.
It actually gives you the option to open in Word.
Oh.
Yeah,
But
that's what I'd recommend.
Oh, here we go.
Because I shouldn't have used track changes because
Well, I want to know the change. That's my problem. Is I don't want to consider this unless I can compare it to what we already have.
okay, I'm gonna simplify it. I
Word.
changed everything.
Yeah, you did.
That's
have
why you
it
may
from
not.
the
And
App
so,
Store,
like
probably.
I said, I tried to get this down to a
Might
guiding
be pretty quick.
document that instead of just regurgitating what the study said, which I think the study had good stuff in it. I admit I didn't spend a lot of time on the executive summary, so I said
I
need more
think
fluff
it's-
here.
Okay.
I think it's dated. I don't think it's good information. I think it's so dated that it's not really relevant.
Okay.
Sure.
And then the city demographic, I took out some portions, like maybe this was just me, but I didn't think we needed to talk about racial statistics in the community. I don't know.
Yeah, stuff like that I thought was inappropriate.
I thought I just took it out and said, look, this is how big we are. This is our citizens. This is the population projections. Growth potential I left in because that was where we're going. And then I created a section called Goals and Guidelines for Syracuse Parks. And I'd kind of like to start there. And again, we can skip down and talk about park plans, existing parks and trail descriptions, and that's where we get into park classifications. We can start wherever you want, but really I wanted just a section that said, these are our goals. This is what we want in our city. These are the types of amenities we want in those parks. I also talked about our facilities. These are what we want in our facilities. And this I did in about an hour, so I agree it's probably extremely terse. It's going to need some updating, but I just thought this was a better starting point. If you guys say we want to start from the other one, you won't hurt my feelings, but I personally think this is closer to what I envision this document as being, as opposed to a says.
My thought especially is when we get into planning, the more convoluted and long-winded it is, the less I don't want to have to navigate it.
Yep.
This gives us 8 pages is something that we can go through and pick and choose the things that we really want to focus on, and I think that's a much better plan in my opinion.
A good plan is succinct.
Yes.
Yes.
And then
And
it
it's
leaves,
very
and it's not
clear.
regulatory either.
Mm-mm.
Whereas when you get into the nuts and bolts of everything, then you're tying hands for the future, in my opinion again.
So I didn't put active versus passive. If that's something we want to put in here, that we want that is a 1-line addition.
Why don't we put programmable?
And I am good with that.
So
So that nobody is surprised.
I respect the time you put into it,
Okay.
and there's probably a lot in there that I would actually.
Okay.
But I don't like starting with it. I
Okay.
want to start with the one that was forwarded to us by the citizen group.
Okay.
Would be my feeling.
Other comments?
I would rather start with what you did because it seems like it's more on target for where we want to land. I actually spent several hours on Saturday. I had some time. I went through the parks plan again, and what we had in the packet from the parks plan, there's so much gibberish that I just think is not appropriate for a plan.
And that might be right, and maybe those are things that a citizen group doesn't catch or think about because they were
focusing on
focusing on those big 5 points.
And those maps, and I actually have those will be more points because I think a lot of those maps that show our parks and where we're lacking in parks, I think those are fine in a guiding document. They should be in here. What I didn't like were the other 80 pages of fluff around the maps.
Yeah, and I can't stand the way that the data is presented because I think it's very subjective. I don't think that it was academic at all in the way that it was classified.
But the main were considered by a passionate group of citizens.
Then let's put
And
those
for-
main
and
points
for us to-
in 8 pages instead of 50.
And for us to, that's fine. But for us to come in here and say, but that's not what we want, I understand we're the council, but let's take their feedback.
Okay.
I thought we are taking their feedback as an appendix, right? Isn't that what this
No, I'm
discussion's
not.
about?
So
I'm not
I
even
took-
talking about the survey.
I took whatever was in here and put it in the appendix because it was all the descriptive words that kind of
Okay, so
cover
that's
this.
different.
I thought this was a boiled down version of all of that stuff.
And honestly, I think that I felt like the approach that came back when I read that it hardly changed. There wasn't a lot of change in that document. There was very little change. And that means the approach to me was just update a couple of things and take what was given to us that was already rejected by 2 councils and put it in front of us again. Because I still object to that. I don't think it was a good plan.
So you want to start with this one? Where are the other 2? So we know where you are, Doug.
I think that we have to start back over the other ones because you want community buy-in for your parks. You have to start with the community for
And
the buy-in.
Agree,
So you have
but
to
the
start
community
there.
edited a document we put before them.
They
Yeah,
didn't
that's
go
the
through
error.
all of the 80 pages. We focused on what was the task before us to try to figure out where we needed parks, what our acreage was, and those kinds of things.
And I want all of that to stay in
We did
here.
not actually go paragraph by paragraph through
So
that
let's
document.
take those maps.
So I would suggest if you want to, you can also have their input in those paragraphs.
Okay, so what I would like to do is take those maps that they worked so hard on and put them under the section current inventory and amenities, or even say proposed, and put all those, because I think the maps were not given to me with this document, so I didn't have the maps. But if they spent time on the maps and some work on the maps, great, put them
Well,
in here.
I guess
But the rest of it,
what I'm trying to say is that I don't think that these 5 people in this room are the smartest people in this room, or in this, nor are we in our community when
Okay.
it comes to parks. So I do believe that it's okay to get other people's inputs who are coaches. We have several coaches on our committee. We have people who are.
How many people are on the committee?
We have, I think, 3 coaches.
so I would like to put this before them and let them vote. Lisa, what do you
We have people
think?
from the high school.
I would like for us to work on this and say this is kind of what we'd like to, and say, look, this is, and I put in here that there's sections where I would like.
Exactly. I do remember it felt like a push-pull. So we have, around 1,000 people who read this, and that's 3% of our population. So it's not indicative of where everybody stands. So I love
study
that.
says that.
I love that we have and I don't feel at all like the 5 of us should be the ones deciding, and Presta as well, but it needs to be, we start with a small number of pages to go through, add to them if you need to, but clarity is crucial, and not being too regulatory. I love a plan, but I don't want to tie hands in the future if we say, well, our population's needs and demographic has changed now. We don't need as many programmable parks anymore because we have a lot of retired people and they tend to want a passive park. We can't tie the hands of the future. I just think that we should leave it less regulatory.
Well, let me throw out a suggestion, and that is to send both plans, yours and the other one, back to with instructions based on tonight, back to the.
That's actually what I recommended
The
as
committee.
part of the, and you'll notice in
I-
here.
I think, wait a minute, before we do that, we sent it there and we got back something that addressed certain parts and left others completely untouched. So maybe our instructions weren't clear enough. So maybe what we need to do is kind of clear up where we think that this should be, what should be touched on and what should be in it, and then send them a document to review and let them work on that. But I don't want to go back and say, okay, now take the 2 and try to sort them out, because I think that this is our turn now. It went there, it came back. I think we need to take some time and see what we think it should look like. And Jordan, I want to start with your document. I didn't have time tonight to start with your document.
Just teasing.
So I think that we need to visit this again in another meeting, but we need to have some time where we can actually work together, and we can do it through email in some senses where we can share things, one-on-one and with individuals, and maybe work out some things that we think need to be in there. But I don't think we'll get a different result by doing the same thing.
See,
Well, I would suggest we don't do it by email.
I
don't think
would
that's
too.
right.
the reason I did this is because I started going through it and making edits, because that's what we do in the packet is we go through and
Yeah.
say, okay, these are the things that I want to
I have
change.
several edits.
And I had so many changes that I'm like, why are we starting with something that I have to change everything for me to be okay with it?
Yep. And that's where I was. I mean, I was going page after page of notes, and I thought, this is what the reason it was tabled the last time is we decided it was too far off to be saved.
Yeah, we don't know how to get here from there, because it's
not even pointed in the right direction.
it's like going to Texas to go to New York.
That's how my mind thinks, actually. That's where I'm directionally impaired, but not necessarily to this. I don't want through Texas to get to New York, but I think that I think anytime you bring it before a committee, our job is to make it as succinct as possible for them to do their job. If we give them a lot of information that we want to say, but cross that out, then we haven't done our job.
I think this needs a lot of work, and I think that we need to take that on.
Okay, we still have time.
No, we don't. I mean, I think
We
that
have till 8:30.
So are you okay then if we just I would like to just do a review of what I presented,
in 12
and
minutes.
let's talk about what it's missing. If there are parts that are missing, let's talk about it and see if there are things that you really want in there. But there is no way I'm going to approve an 80-page plan.
Me neither.
I want to approve a 40-page plan.
I like
A plan
8 to 20.
is not a plan if it takes 80 pages to describe it.
Yeah. Part of our
I-
job is to disseminate the information and come up with something that,
The only thing is, though,
easier.
is that the reason why we do create committees is to help us do the lifting, so that we don't have to do all of it.
And
But-
I wish that
And
committee
I
would've.
think the committee will fix whatever we put in front of
And
them.
we were given very specific directions on some things, and which we did,
Mhm.
and granted, they didn't get to the other parts of it. Send it back, say, do it again.
And I
It's not
am.
that
Now,
hard.
we've seen how
Well,
that
and
works
there-
with.
Yeah, there was no specific direction to the committee on how big the plan has to be. Or,
Yeah,
I mean,
and I
there's no-
agree. And I guess we were kind of hoping that we could take the survey out of it and let the survey guide a plan. But what I got back was, survey says
Yeah.
this, survey says this, and every paragraph started with, the survey says you need to do this. And I'm okay if we say our plan is to do the things the survey said, that's a plan. But to just regurgitate the entire survey is not a plan. It's a survey
And
response.
it jumped to some pretty broad conclusions from that survey that I thought were inappropriate.
And the plan was, I mean, there were huge sections about financing in there, that we needed to finance, that all the citizens were okay with spending, we could raise taxes by $5, and 50% of the
Okay.
population was okay with that.
That's not, I don't think that's accurate at all.
But that was in the plan.
Then let's take some time to and have that committee go through it and take all that out of the plan.
And I
Then why didn't you do it before it came here?
Because
That's the problem.
We were given very
Yeah.
specific direction on trying to figure out what acreage we
What-
needed.
but from
what
who?
on maps. It was how the committee was.
Actually, there was no.
directed.
Yeah, other than come back with a plan.
And I
You
agree.
know,
I don't,
And-
yeah, I don't,
And
I think
so
we
we're-
just,
So
It's
they
not
came
like-
back with a plan.
They're not
Okay.
like little kids. But at the same time, if you want to be super specific on it, great. I'm just saying, let them do the heavy lifting. We can say, hey, look, here's some suggestions, here's some things that you need to take out. But at the same time, we can't think that we've got it all in spades. That
I do not believe
I
that
think-
we have a monopoly on good ideas.
And I also think that we're kind of,
We're not trying to poo-poo on what they did.
well, that's definitely how it feels, and I guess I should put feelings aside.
I really,
So, because, I
my
mean,
frustration comes before they even got involved. I think you started with a flawed plan and you ended with an amended flawed plan.
well, I can
It was
just,
better.
I can just say that the people on it have a very true heart as far as wanting to do a good job. And so if you want to give them different direction, that's fine. But I don't think that that means you need to take back all the control and all the power.
No.
That you need to give them the direction that you want them to go and let them do it.
I would like to propose that we send this amended plan to them for review and ask them if they think they can get there with this, because we do want the plan to be, excluding maps, 15 pages or less.
Well, we can't, okay, so I think you're on the same page as what I'm about to say, but when you say send them the amended plan, I think this body needs a chance to read your amended plan and add or subtract to it. We need to give our input to that before it goes back to that committee.
Okay?
And I think it's a great starting point. I applaud your effort.
Thank you.
And I want to build on that. But I'm not gonna condone, or I'm not gonna consent, at least on my vote, that I'm not going to do my due diligence before I send it back.
Okay?
I am in support of part of that. I am in support of looking at Jordan's plan and the old plan, the old new plan, for the purpose of sending back to them general directions of
Okay.
here's what we want to see and here's what we don't want to see.
Okay, so, and I'm fine with that. If they want to start from the old plan, I will support that. But I will say that I will not support a plan that, again, excluding maps, is more than like 15 pages.
I'm good with that. That makes sense.
And I'm good with taking
and
all the references to the survey out and putting the survey just in the appendix.
That's what I did.
And that's fine.
I think that we need to be more specific than that, and I don't mean, I mean for the sake of the committee. We
Oh,
need
sure,
to-
you can
we
give them
need to
some
be
more
able to-
directions that, other than 15 pages, sure.
We need to be able to say, look, these are sections that we don't feel apply to the plan, so it's better said somewhere else or not said at all. And these are sections that we want refined, and we definitely want your opinion as a committee on how you feel this
I think
boils out. That
another-
would be more direction.
I
Okay.
think another point of direction for the committee, which we didn't have at the time, would be to take a look at the nodes and what's coming in those areas and to plan according to those
Mhm.
as well. That's really important.
But I think there is one takeaway that that we really do need to focus on as a committee, is that we do need to really figure out how to finish parks. And I think that's what this plan, that's really what this plan needs
That's
to
a great
say.
one, too.
Is
What it needs to say,
is
and
we
I don't
need
think
to
it
say
does
we
yet.
need
So-
to finish parks.
Before we.
So far, we have
Gather
Certainly
more.
before we
15
gather
pages,
more unfinishable
15
land.
pages, look at nodes.
Well, I
Look
think
at
give us a
the
chance to
finishing
review this and
parts.
talk about it
Yeah.
before we say this is the direction.
So really,
Well, those
yeah.
are really good ones to name out right now.
So-
Let's
Well,
name them out.
you know, I might look at that and say, Jordan, we really gotta go to 20, or Jordan, I think if you go more than 10,
Well-
you're just adding fluff.
If the committee can't do it in 15, they'll let you know, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
But I really would like to have everyone take a good look
Don't I
at the
get a
plan.
chance to look at, weigh in on it?
Yeah.
Well,
See,
sure, I'm just saying that the committee could, I mean, if you
When
give
does
them
the
direction in
committee meet
15, we are
It's as
at
directed
your request.
by the
We are
council.
not meeting currently. This is according to your request. That's the point of this whole thing, is let them do the lifting.
So what I'd like is just, if you guys, because we only have 5 minutes left, if you guys wouldn't mind, just review this, because this is really my proposal, and you can take it or leave it, but I would like you to review it.
Okay.
If it's close to what you want and we can add things in or take things away, I'm happy to be the coordinator point for this. If you can just send me comments, I will add it in. I will send it out to you guys one more time, and then let's put it before the Parks Committee.
I don't know if that's legal to do, Paul. You tell me if we can, you know, talk about public
Amend the
policy
documents right
by
now.
sending email one back and forth to, I mean, I guess if we're doing it individually.
This is a plan that's not an ordinance.
No, but it
It could be a
because it
public
will
meeting.
influence
Public
tax
meeting,
dollars. then it is public policy that influences the use of tax dollars. That's the question.
I think the big issue is if you start engaging with each other back and forth and using as essentially an electronic meeting, then it could be a problem. But if
I'm
you're
just
all
saying-
sending one email and say this is our input.
Yeah, make
then that's
notes
okay.
and send them to me.
Okay, do a one
See,
timer.
I'm gonna clarify what I said before. I don't want to redline either of these plans, yours or the other one. I want to come up with general concepts
And that's
that need to be addressed.
okay. And so I feel like
Three.
general concepts should be headings.
No, I think that it's our turn to try and put some text that we think gives the flavor of what this plan is supposed to be.
Well, I understand if
So-
that's what he wants to do for his
Okay,
review.
But, you know, I mean, clearly we're not finishing in this meeting. I think that we deserve a chance to go over this now, and I appreciate what you did. I wanna look at it. I want to build on it. I think it, probably is the right direction.
I accept that.
I'm trying to figure out where your plan stops and the continuation.
Where
of the
it
rest
says
is.
appendix, as soon as you get down to the appendix, which is on page.
Oh, there we go, I see it.
Appendix
Okay.
A, JUB study on
Got
page,
it.
looks like page 10.
Great, thank you.
Page 9 and up.
Appendix. Got
Okay.
it.
So,
All right.
what
so
I have is council will review, Councilmember Savage's proposal. We'll put it on a future agenda
Yep.
for discussion to decide what specific direction you will give the Park Advisory Committee in terms of the overall purpose of and goals that you want to achieve with the plan, right? Does that sound right?
Well, I think we come to those conclusions at the end of that discussion.
Yeah, whether that's
Yeah.
next meeting or the following,
Yeah,
whenever
whatever
you
it
get
is,
done.
we have that discussion and then we arrive at conclusions we arrive at.
I mean, cause I would think you wanna give them, there's a certain reason for the plan,
Yeah.
right? And you wanna communicate.
That should be
those
the
reasons.
executive statement.
And you should
Executive
Chris
summary.
names that really well.
communicate that to your
5
committee.
points.
Feel free to
Like
put that in the executive, like I said add stuff here.
I agree. You know, that's, yeah.
Okay.
You finished?
Sure.
I think
Okay.
so. 1 minute to spare, 50 seconds, go.
Let me just make a comment. You notice I haven't been involved heavily, and I try not to be involved with my opinion. And I think what has come about, as we've said around the table, is probably the first positive step we have really made towards the park master plan as we have sat here and talked this. And I think the right thing has been done. The thing I don't want to walk away from this is to somehow minimize the importance of these task forces. Dave, you sat on a task force that designed a regional park. You know, there, all of the rest, you and Andrea sat there, you labored with JUB, you did all that stuff with it. What I would ask you to do is to give the work of each of those task forces a fair shake, and that we not go off chasing squirrels over the fact that somehow we think something was missed by the task force. Maybe the task force did.
I want
But
to,
but I'll be the first one to say it was a first good swing at what they've done. It would have been nice to have your comments a little sooner, so that they could be, you know, they could.
I didn't know we were reviewing this until I
properly,
reviewed the packet.
you know, properly vetted.
Sunday.
So, I appreciate the conversation that's gone on here, and I think we have a clear understanding as the staff of what direction to go now. So,
Sure.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. The discussion of what's going on in the legislature. Who's going to lead that one?
I can.
You want to do that?
Yep. Okay, how much time do we have on this?
We have 15 minutes.
Okay.
Whatever you need.
What page are we on? Do you even know?
No, we've got to go into a closed session. It's going to be a while. So we need to keep moving.
Okay. So, the reason this is here tonight is to see if there's any specific,
This is
position
another thing too, right?
that you as the council might have on any of these bills that is either of utmost importance or perhaps in conflict with the overall league position, so that when we discuss with other cities, when we discuss with legislators, we can, when I say we, I mean either staff or members of the LPC, or you, if you communicate privately to your legislators, that we represent the same position. So I just wanted to do a quick review of these. Some of them aren't too important, so we'll blow through some of them. HB 31, water supply and surplus water amendments. This does not have a huge impact, other than if we sell water to a significant, I think it's 10% or more of our users if they're outside of the city. For example, if a development happens out in the county and we provide water to them, we have to jump through some extra hoops and make a plan, and we can't charge them significantly higher rates because they're outside of our city. We have to treat them the same as our residents.
But do we have to supply to them?
We do not.
Because, quite honestly, if that's the issue, if we think it's justified to charge more and we can't, then we just don't.
And
Don't supply.
That is your discretion. So I don't think this one's too important for Syracuse, but just wanted to let you know that that's there. HB 54 has passed already. From time to time, the state amends the fire code. Basically, that will impact our inspections of businesses and things like that.
But it's done.
It is what it is. HB 59, government enterprise amendments. We're just watching this one. The league is opposed to it. Currently, it does not affect us because it only affects cities of the first and second class, which is essentially cities that are of population 65,000 or higher.
We don't have to think about B.
But these things do have a tend to creep if they get passed, or during the session they could amend, so we're just keeping an eye on it. It requires the city to do a full market study and an impact study on private businesses if we ever provide a service that could reasonably be provided by the private sector.
It's a lot of work.
So
Like Utopia or something like that?
anything that could be provided by the private
Any
sector.
type of bid, you have to do full research on all of them.
Wow.
HB 69, legal notices amendments.
So
This
that failed?
there's a question mark there. It regulates advertising rates by newspapers and allows certain advertisement requirements to be met if we send the notification directly to our people.
Right, for instance, on our bills.
Looks like that failed.
That failed too.
Okay.
Okay.
Never mind, looks like it is actually defeated.
Okay, so no need to worry about that one. HB 74, open meeting amendments. This essentially allows city council to go into a closed session for the existing reasons, but then also strictly for receiving legal advice from a city attorney.
But it adds that
Yeah, but
to the.
Can't we do that already?
No.
So the statute doesn't allow for it. The courts have allowed it. There's common law that supports it, and
This is just formalizing
it's kind of been a practice in most cities.
That's what I kind of thought, is we kind of have those moments
kinda
where.
Generally,
clarifies
yeah, there has to be a threat of litigation before you can do it. This would be a little broader.
Yeah, right now it's only if there's potential litigation.
I got you. I was
Right.
trying to figure out the distinction.
Okay, HB 145, citizen political process amendments. So this involves initiatives and referendum. It sets some requirements on signatures to basically prevent fraudulent signatures. Cassie, I'm not sure if it has any other major impacts.
No, it's pretty technical. It just changes like formatting of petition sheets, which is
So nothing really
Yeah.
relevant.
not a big
'Kay.
issue. There's not a lot of concern
So it could pass and we probably won't notice.
among the city reporters groups. It was weird that that was running concurrent with House Bill 119, because that does make major amendments to political activities, initiatives, and referenda. So I don't know why they didn't just get combined, because there's been talk of a comprehensive change to that.
Do you
the
want to go
election
into
code.
that on 119 a little bit?
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth right now between the legislature and recorders groups that are working through the ULCT. Because a lot of the changes that are being proposed in the law are really tricky to apply. And I think that's a lot, we deal with that a lot with legislation, is the person writing the bill and the people that are voting on it don't really know how it's gonna be applied after it's adopted. So there's some changes in some deadlines for gathering signatures, for submitting signatures to the county for signature verification. Some changes to like removing your name from a petition. There's some concerns about, have you guys ever had the experience of going into a grocery store or even like the DMV and there's someone out there collecting signatures for a statewide petition?
Mm-hmm.
So there's some discussion of somehow, I don't even know how to word it, like verifying that that person is eligible to gather signatures. But who's going to govern that, and who's going to enforce that and determine what, if that person meets those eligibility requirements? So there's a lot of issues that are still up in the air. There's a lot of debate about how a ballot title gets drafted. Right now, the city attorney for a city is responsible to draft a ballot title if there's an issue that's challenged by the voters. And some of these petition sponsors are not wanting that. They want it to be someone other than the city attorney. So they're, cities are
They
finding
themselves.
Yeah, that's really what it boils down to, is that they feel like the city has too much control over the message that is sent about a ballot question and the process. And so
Does this change the ability for the city to have a position on a ballot issue and publish it?
no, so you would still have a voter information pamphlet, which would provide the city the ability to, but the city's information that's in a voter information pamphlet is strictly factual.
Right.
It's not opinion based.
Right.
And so, in the past, council members individually can obviously communicate with their constituents why they voted on an issue or why they didn't, but this group wants more of that in the voter information pamphlet. They want it to be more, it feels like they want it to be a little more politically charged, instead of fact-based.
So it'll say the city supports this initiative or this ballot question, or the city is
These
opposed
members
to it.
of your council support and these oppose.
Yes.
They
Right.
really want that in this one, I
Yes,
heard.
they do.
And have that discussion in
And
the
that's
pamphlet.
that's kind of scary too. I mean, because really, city government is nonpartisan, and so there could be some issues that could be pretty political and down party lines, and so there's some opposition to that.
Do you have any? So one of the things that the League of Cities and Towns at the last LPC specifically asked for on HB 119 was they need feedback from cities on this bill as to whether they like it or not, or whether to pull or push or get out of the way.
Sounds like it's a mess right now, so I'm
Yeah,
not
I
in
think
favor.
so.
don't like it.
Do we have any direction that we want, or that
So
you
there's
would
two
recommend?
parts to this. I mean, on the one hand, it makes nonpartisan governments very politically defined as partisan. But on the other hand, for a bunch of people who rarely read anything about who's leading their government, except for during the election, or even with the exception of on the ballot, it does give them at least some perspective as to who they've voted for in the past or who they're voting for. I mean, it is one. I mean, I'm not going to deny that in a way it gives them some perspective. I don't think, from what I've heard so far, it's manageable or at all refined in a way that could be deployed, but
Or even enforceable in some aspects.
And obviously we're not going to write it, but I mean I do see some value in, say, like for instance, the explanations the judges put about their service and their ratings. But councils don't get rated.
right.
We don't.
Just at the election at the
Right.
And at some point,
voting booth.
we kind of ought to. I mean, I kind of can't say that it's not a good idea somewhere for people to figure out how your council people are voting on issues so that people know.
Of course, all they have to do is show up to one of these meetings.
Or
But
read-
I mean,
or
keep
read
in
the
mind-
minutes.
Keep in mind that this legislation is specific to if a citizens group is proposing like a law
Right.
be adopted, or if they're opposing a law that the council
Proposition
has
or-
adopted and they're
Right.
wanting it on the ballot. So it's not, gonna be every single issue that you vote on, you know, just voting records across the board. It would be very specific issues.
Like would it also include something like when we did the rap tax?
No, don't
Yeah,
we
yeah, it could
have
They
a
would ask if
submission
we look
time
forward or
for
not.
citizens to submit?
Yeah,
So that's already provided for.
But we
Yeah,
can
so
reserve the
this-
right to say no position.
Oh, absolutely.
I guess
but
you can.
You can, can't you? But at the same time, we usually do have an attorney position, and then we will have an opposing and
we
a supporting
advertise
position.
for people to actually make those arguments in the voter information pamphlet.
Right.
But what this bill is asking for is an explanation of how every single council member voted on an issue and their reasons for how they voted on it. So,
Oh, so this
yeah,
is-
you don't have to say.
But if it's on the
rap
ballot, we
tax
haven't
one
voted
is
for it
tricky.
yet.
Well, the rap tax one, you
This
have
would be
to
a
adopt
post.
a resolution to put that on
Okay.
the ballot.
Sure.
And so I guess they could say, you know,
Why did you
we
vote to
wanna
put it
know
on the
why
ballot?
you,
Because I wanted to put it
yeah,
before
whether you
people.
support
Right,
it or
and
not.
that would be.
Because I didn't want to
But
decide
that's,
to raise your
I
taxes.
don't think that's a good
I wanted to
example.
let you
Okay.
decide.
I mean, it
I
would
was just
fall,
curious.
it would fall under it because it's a ballot question, but, we've only had a couple
Sure.
of petitions like this in the city, and they were both in the 2007 election, but they were some pretty sticky issues. One of them was called our form of government issue. It wasn't really that, but that's what it was referred to as. And then we also had, beer and alcohol sales on the ballot. So, I mean, put yourself in the position of being forced to say
Yeah.
why you supported adopting an ordinance that allowed beer sales in Walmart or any, you know, store in the city. And then that's gonna go to every household in the city. And maybe that makes you uncomfortable, maybe it doesn't, but there are some issues
I had
that,
a Prop 8 sign in my yard.
yeah, I mean, there's some issues that could be problematic. So, I think a lot of cities haven't gotten really involved because they haven't had, referendums in their city.
Yeah.
I just have major PTSD from ours, and so this,
I could
like,
understand,
reading this
yeah.
legislation really stresses me out, that it just makes it more,
I think it's
It's tricky.
hostile
Yeah.
to
Yes.
the representatives.
yeah.
Yes.
And to our representative form of government.
Yes.
But it also increases transparency, so I can
But
see that on that
sadly-
But
side.
it doesn't, because they can show up to any of these
Yeah.
meetings and find out how we vote.
Okay,
So
that's
there's
fair.
your transparency already. I think it makes it harder for somebody who, to run for office knowing that they will have a target on them. And not only
It's
will it
already
be
that
people
way.
who are, yeah, it is, it really
But-
is.
but
But
this-
it would be sent out and advertised in such a way that tends to bring people out of the woodwork
Right.
with hostile designs.
Right.
And not along with that, it removes the responsibility of the citizen to really find out, you know, it says, oh, we're gonna spoon feed this now to
Yeah.
We don't
So-
need to put any of
so
that in the voter
I'm-
pamphlet because it's all on Facebook.
Yeah.
So let's just leave it there.
So on this issue, let's direct,
I'd say
So it sounds like I'm opposed to
I'm
it,
opposed.
just because
Opposed.
it's,
Opposed.
Opposed.
Like this does not.
it,
do
as
enough.
written,
It's
it's
not
not, it's not
helpful.
implementable.
Here's where I'm on this. I think that it's gonna fail because people are just gonna say, it's too messy to deal
Well,
with.
but what's your position? That's about your opinion of it, but what's your position?
I think it's just gonna die. Fortunately, I won't have to make it.
It might fail in its current form, but the legislature's been talking about a really comprehensive bill and
Here's-
changes to the referendum process in the state for a couple of years now anyway, and so I think
So it'll keep coming back.
if it's not this session, it's gonna keep getting resurrected. So.
What I wish the position
Yes,
that
they
with
know.
the ULCT
Yeah,
would
as it's
take
written right now, I
is
think
if you put this on cities and towns, then you put this on everybody else. You put this on state, house, and senate representatives, so that you have to live by those rules too, and I guarantee they won't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
It's
their current.
statewide right now.
Yeah, their current position right now is that it needs to be amended. But,
But
okay.
you
I
need to
would say
tell them,
just say
look,
we oppose.
stop.
As an amendment.
I mean, really, this is something that I wish ULCT would fight for more, is if, you know, stop having the state try to tell cities how to be cities. I mean, really, they
That's
get
what
so
their job
angry,
is.
no, they get so angry when the Fed tells them how to be a state, but they do the same thing to us as cities.
Oh, constantly.
So.
But that's what ULCT is trying to do, is tell the state, knock it
Okay,
off.
so I think I've got direction on that one. I wanna spend
Okay.
some time on the next one.
Yeah, this one's a
Cause
mess.
cause it's hot, so,
Yeah.
We've got Senate Bill 34, affordable housing modifications. It's in the Senate third reading. It does have support. So this bill is the product of an interim committee that's been working on this throughout the last year, and with members of local government. Basically, it requires cities to, in their general plan, address how they will create a realistic opportunity for affordable housing to occur. We do not have to guarantee it, but we have to create a reasonable opportunity. Now, in doing so, it asks us to consider at least 2 of now 23.
Oh, is it 23 now?
Yeah, it's
22 on
it's
Monday.
modified.
It's been 23 now.
Yeah, 23 listed tools in the law, and I wanted to show you what those were real quick. So here's an excerpt from the bill. So the city would have to show how it will provide a realistic opportunity for development of moderate income housing within the next 5 years. Moderate income housing is defined as basically or a household that has 80% or less of the median income of the county could afford.
And that's my fundamental problem. When they go of the county,
Mhm.
not all
Going through
cities
Heights
are.
and
Yeah.
Bountiful and
Yeah.
South
Yeah.
Salt Lake.
And that means that, yeah, somebody in West Bountiful or North Salt Lake that lives in a trailer park gets compared to our city and said, well, you know, you guys, everybody in your city is too wealthy by their standard.
Well, yeah, and so does the $1 million homes up on the hill.
Yeah.
I mean, it all gets factored in, but that's what I want to get to is the tools that we would have available in
Right.
order to comply.
Right.
So it includes rezone for densities necessary to assure production of moderate income housing,
Mm-hmm.
facilitate rehabilitation of infrastructure that will encourage construction of moderate income housing, encourage rehabilitation of basically old decrepit housing stock,
So we don't really have
which
any
we don't
of
have a
those
lot
two.
of.
well, but we can encourage specific locations to. But what does encourage mean?
Rehab of it.
These are
No, this
yeah,
is encouraged.
these
You
tools
don't
not
want to
actually
declare
do it.
blight, yeah.
yeah these tools are very broad still,
Yeah.
and some of them we already have.
I think we already meet. When I talked to Carrie Ann last night, she said we probably already meet this.
I think
Yeah,
we
isn't
either
that what you
do
said, Brody?
or we're extremely close to and
Right.
wouldn't
Yeah.
be too hard to do. So, for example, one that I know we have is we allow accessory dwelling units
Yeah.
in our city.
Yeah.
Right, and you know that can be basement and as well. We can add that too.
Yep.
I don't think we have that in our ordinance right now for basement apartments.
We do. They just have to be.
Has to be a separate kitchen and everything.
Right, separate entrance and
Mhm.
a fire block in between,
Yep.
probably.
Hot.
Okay, good. I didn't know for sure.
You know, there are other tools we do have. If we wanted to, we could use, for example, actually the CRAs now, our CDAs now, they require a certain percentage of the tax increment to go towards affordable housing, and that can be either done by donating to the state housing fund, or
The
by
Walker.
bringing that back into the CDA itself. And there's lots of different tools that we have at our
So in
our
short,
discretion.
I'm very opposed to this. I'm also very concerned that there's a lot of chatter around this bill
Punitive measures.
that there will be punitive measures added by the House.
And
Well,
if
that-
they aren't now, they will be later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I have no interest in anything that is punitive towards cities.
And unless I can dictate what they can put in Clearfield, which I can't. I mean, why are we letting someone that lives in Salt Lake dictate what I have to build in my community?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know they're dictating what you have to build. What they're saying is housing affordability statewide is an issue, and they're saying here's some tools that you can use to address that issue, and we'd like you to consider 2 of them. That's really what it says.
I'm opposed to this.
The other question I have with this is that will they let those same 2 items be submitted year after year after year? Because it's gonna
Yeah.
be annual submissions,
Mhm.
and will they say, oh, we don't
You
like
already
what you're
did
doing?
those, you have to get
No,
two
I
more.
to do
believe,
something
yeah,
else.
no, you just have to use 2. And that can be-
Forever.
Yeah,
Agree
if
the
those
same
are,
too?
yeah, and obviously they would like to see those 2 be
But,
effective.
see, that's the
but-
problem. If they deem one of them non-effective, then they'll mend and pull that one out, and we could end up with a list of things that we really don't like as the only options.
Yeah, this is just the start of someone digging a hole.
Yeah.
It's gonna get deeper.
Yeah, so
Unfortunately, there's huge support with this for a lot of cities, so I'll tell you right now, there's not anybody speaking out. I mean, they are about the punitive measures, but not about the menu items.
That's because they're making it so simple to start.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree, but I'm just saying, I'm giving you the warning that it's probably gonna pass. I'm
Then
just-
The
as
Senate-
ULCT, I would like
I would like them to oppose this.
I'll to say
But it looks like they
ULCT
aren't.
likes it.
No,
Opposing
yeah,
it?
the LPC is supporting this.
They're
Whenever
supporting
they
it,
post
they
LPC
like
supports
it.
Yeah.
And most of the cities in it like it. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think that the political reality right now is you've got public opinion fed by the legislature, developers, the media,
Ellis
are all
Ivory.
saying
Mhm.
this is a huge problem, and I think
Mhm.
Including
rents are really
governor,
high
who thinks this
all
is
over the
city's
state.
fault.
And so they're saying we need to address this, and the way that they're going to try and address it, one of the ways is to say to cities, stop getting in the way.
Yeah.
And if we resist it, then the alternative is they force something worse down our throat. So that's the idea. Is they say we need to be on the offensive here, and we need to have policy that we actually can control and is not punitive, and so that's why they're supporting this bill. If the House comes in and changes it and makes it punitive, I guarantee the League will not support it. The LPC will say, whoa, we're against this, fight it as best that we can.
Yeah, and I agree. I think from a political perspective, if we say this isn't an issue, we don't need to do anything. I think Paul's right. It's going to get jammed down our throats because they believe it is an issue, and they have the power to jam it down our throat.
I mean, they were threatening having the state take
Right.
multifamily decisions away from cities and have some state board decide
Right.
Oh my
where to put
God.
You
apartments.
get it, and this is
It's
where.
out-
They
Outrageous.
threw it out there.
Seriously?
Now that's
Oh
Yeah.
my
doesn't mean it's
gosh.
gonna pass, but that was an idea. There's punitive saying take away their Class C funds if they don't support it.
Right.
Who
Well,
were
this is
those
just
people
ridiculous.
that did that?
This is by far a more
What-
reasonable proposal.
What the league is suggesting right now, and I didn't put it in the Dropbox, but I'll send it through email, is the approach needs to be on the offensive is to educate the people and the legislators of what we are doing.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's why there was that whole thing with the videos.
Yeah, we do recognize this as an issue, and here's what we're doing.
Yes.
And
This is
they,
what we've done.
we can call the league, and they will bring their camera team, their communications team up, and they'll create a little 1-2 minute video, and we can describe what we've done in our city to help address this issue.
And they wanted to give that to the legislators and
Yes.
say,
They're
listen,
trying
they
to
are
flood
being
them with-
proactive.
Yes.
Yes,
and
that
then-
we are doing something you
Mhm.
don't need to
We need to
penalize.
And I
do
support that.
And then we
I do
send
too.
that
I
video
don't.
to the
You
legislators.
don't want to
Well-
be on camera?
I don't
wanna
support
be
being the
fair.
poster child for something that they're trying to make us do.
Well, but except
We
for-
will do what's right for our community.
Except for if they believe it's our fault, that the governor is going to keep telling them it's the city's fault and you need to fix this and you need to pass this law and you need to punish them because it's their fault. That's what the governor is touting right now.
Yeah,
I
well, you
don't
can
think
say that
it's
'cause
us
he's
being a
not up
poster
for
child for
re-election.
what they want. I'd say it's us saying, here's what we've proactively done already without your interference. Here's what we have already done, so you're misguided in thinking that we are a barrier.
Right. Exactly. We need to correct the misinformation.
Okay.
Now, if we said, we're sorry, we'll do what you said, then that might be an issue, but,
And
yeah, that bugs.
Do we have interest in going on camera with some of
Yes.
the things we've
I think it's a
done?
good idea because we can tell them. We've been trying to. We have to tell them in a report.
I
anyway.
think we're gonna have to say something,
I say we
as
wear
long as we have a
matching
good story to
outfits.
no,
I'm kidding.
let the mayor do it. But just making sure it's something that goes over well.
Yeah, well, we would run it by it certainly, and I do think that, you know, based on our location, we do have legislators that do have some influence in how this is going to go.
Right.
The Speaker of the House is in
Yeah.
our city, so.
Right.
wow.
And then
He represents our city. Doesn't live here, does he?
No,
He lives in Kaysville.
Kaysville, but.
Well, yeah, his district is in our city.
District is
yeah.
half our city.
And so I think it would go well, and we would send this directly into his inbox, and it would be from Syracuse City, so.
Okay.
And I'll get you that flyer that talks about what's going on statewide with the amount of affordable units that have been developed by, not by cities, but in cities, already, and it continues to grow.
We both sent it.
Yeah, if this ever goes punitive though, we need to make sure
right, it is in your
that
email.
That they fight hard.
that they fight and defeat it.
We could say we are opposed to any punitive action, against cities on these. Absolutely.
This should be a guiding document, and I'm okay submitting a plan.
What I'm most concerned about, Brody, of all these, is that nobody's fighting to get repealed the theft of our sales tax.
I agree.
I'm really upset
Yeah.
about that.
And I talked about that with Representative Lisenby at local elected officials day, and yeah, it just, she, to her credit, she proposed the amendment that made it less onerous than what it was, and that passed, but
Nobody's
there's just not a
repealing
lot
it.
of support to bring it back.
What did she?
Mike
It's
Schultz
wrong.
is the one who wrote it to begin with. You contact him.
What
I have.
did they change? I didn't hear about the amendment.
Yeah,
punitive.
I don't know if it's still online. You can go to like the last,
$52,000
it was like the last day of the session.
Oh, last time.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Pay for
thought something
homeless
new.
that
No, he's
doesn't
talking
do
about the
anything
homeless
for
shelter.
homeless.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Sales tax thing.
And,
So
and if he wanted to pay for it, they had the money in the state budget.
we're almost out of time, but we got two more. So Senate Bill 52 is secondary water metering requirements. It would require the cities to meter all
This is so expensive.
all new secondary water accounts, so any new house starting in July, and then it would require by 2030 to retrofit any existing non-metered.
If this comes with funding,
It has no funding.
I won't
so
fight it. But if it doesn't come with funding, and this is actually a penalty for cities,
It is a
So
penalty.
what it says,
then no.
what
We
it
have to
says is the
finance at least
city,
50%.
yeah, the city will have to pay at least 50%, but there's no guarantee that you're going to get the other.
You're not getting any of it. It's
Bingo.
gonna be.
Would that have to come from our
This is gonna be
citizens?
huge expenditure.
It's going to be
Just
unfunded
from us.
mandate.
Unfunded mandate,
Yeah,
exactly.
so we did some quick calculations. It's actually, if you include the software,
Oh my goodness.
so it does not require us to bill,
8.5 million.
it just requires us to meter. It doesn't-
$8.5
It
million.
doesn't require us to bill per the metering.
Oh my gosh.
It does require us to educate the
8.5
user based on their usage. So, we did some quick calculations, not including the software. We figured it'd be about $8.30 a month increase on the utility bill, which is about 50% of the secondary, which is currently about $16.50.
People can't
And I don't
afford that.
think, I mean, this is my opinion, I realize they think they have the right, but I don't feel like they have the right to come into my city and say, raise every one of your citizens' bill by more than double. That's just
Right.
wrong.
Well, they're not saying you have to raise any bills.
No,
you're-
but they're putting that
You just
expense
have to
on
come
us.
up with
There's
that
no- you have to
Oh, I
pay
see what
for
you're
it one way
saying.
or
I
another.
thought you meant because of usage.
No,
Sorry.
no, they're basically saying, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to come up with this money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
And that's
Yeah.
wrong.
That's
Again.
wrong.
Okay, council, I'll give you till
Okay.
5 after 9.
So we're opposed to that, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Not
Okay.
just amend, oppose.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Not just no, but hell no.
Right.
Yeah, that's
No
for sure.
words.
Okay.
Thank you for
So-
not letting me be the only one on record.
Senate Bill.
Solidarity, man.
Senate Bill 129, Public Safety and Firefighter 2.
Tier two.
Sorry, Firefighter Tier 2 retirement enhancements.
Right.
What this does is, it's an attempt to adjust a little bit what was adjusted down, and now we're feeling the effects in the labor market because of that. So
Maybe.
they increase the employer's contribution to any new Tier 2 public safety employees. I think it's from 12 to 16, is that what it
Yeah.
was? And then it increases the multiplier for retirement. So it basically
Huge support for the
gives
concept.
gives some additional retirement for public safety. And then it does direct some liquor funds to help pay for it. It does not guarantee that in the future.
Yeah.
It's again, it's an
And so-
unfunded
And
mandate.
funded
so
mandate.
cities-
It's a great idea. But
Here's the
you
thing.
gotta pay for it.
I
Yeah.
absolutely, on this one, I would love to see them do something that helps this situation, but this is actually gonna make it worse in my eyes. Because what's gonna happen
take
is,
longer.
they take the money, they start pillaging money that we would spend on these
A
people.
new firefighter.
And so we're gonna
Mhm.
have less firefighters, cause
Right.
I don't wanna have to lay off a shift to pay for this pension. And that's, cause we don't have suddenly new money.
Or your trigger for
Yep.
hiring the next firefighter is going to have to be extended
Right.
in order to pay for the extra retirement. It's,
I'd rather have more
I
first
really would
responders,
love to
and I'd
do
rather put the
something.
money in their pocket now and let them worry about how
And
to spend it.
that was actually brought up in the
401ks
LPC.
Right.
we talked about.
In the
Right.
LPC it was brought up that, you know, the solution might actually, a better solution may
Just
actually
higher
be
wages.
salaries.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rather than
Put
retirement.
it in their
But-
pocket,
but I
let them
wanted to
deal with
give-
retirement.
I wanted to give
Yeah.
Chief Byington some time to kind of explain how that, you know, impacts firefighters and what-
Yeah, well, and for the police as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you're correct on the impact, and the intent of the bill was to help with recruitment and retention for future, but the one thing in the bill it doesn't allow is for the people that are in the current tier 2
Right.
who
Right.
were hired after July 1st, 2011 up until it would
Yeah.
be July 1st of 2019, which they stay in the old system and it doesn't have
So how does that
any-
help with retention?
It
It
does.
doesn't.
It doesn't help with the retention for those individuals.
In fact,
Oh.
it's worse
10
because
years
they'll
out.
want to go get hired somewhere else so that they
So
can
they
be
can
on
be
the
part of
system.
No, they wouldn't.
No,
Oh, they
They
wouldn't.
would be retro in the same system.
Oh, that's
Oh.
awful.
See, that's
It's-
terrible.
It's more of a
Pretty
morality.
In the
much you
current
would have
bill,
to
really-
go to a different
They're
state.
locked in for their 8 years that they put in, but in the future, they would start getting the 2%, just like anyone else in tier 2.
They just
If they're in the
don't.
defined system, that's what the bill's.
If they're in the defined system.
Yeah, if they're in the deferred system, I think they wouldn't have. to
So I strongly oppose. There's just nothing but bad in this. It doesn't do what it says it's going to do.
Yeah, the joint council for the Utah State Fire Chiefs they support the concept because they
Right.
think it's a step in the right direction.
Right.
However, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it has to be the funding has to be a little bit more.
And
We
you
want
have
a
to-
bill, just not this bill.
Right, and you have to
Right.
figure out how the funding's gonna work in the first place, because none of us wanna be California where we're declaring bankruptcy and sorry, none of you get your pension. I mean,
I-
you can't have it unfunded.
I have a question, and then I'm gonna call for a motion to go into closed session. Question I have is, has there been any legwork done to figure out why the shortfall came about?
Who knows? They said 5 million the first year and then 3 million after that.
Well,
And
that
the
was-
cities have to make up the rest.
That's a different shortfall.
So that was a different
Are you talking
one.
about the shortfall from like 8 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, that passed.
Who knows?
That was
They-
just poor
Why'd they
planning, I
roll it back?
think.
From what
There were allegations
There were allegations.
of misuse, mismanagement of
Mm.
the state's funds, and there was a lawsuit staring down
Oh,
the state, and they basically took money out of their general fund, I guess, and just funded the gap.
So that's.
So it's made whole.
That's been passed,
That's
that's
been made whole.
rectified, so
Yep.
originally it was going to, if that wasn't going to be taken care of, the cost would have been put back
Were
on the
there any
cities to make
answers
that
as to
whole.
where that money went?
Don't know,
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's probably spent.
yeah, in fact, yeah, when they did talk about that 2 weeks ago, the one guy talking about it at ULCT said that we still don't know where it is.
Yeah.
Someone's got a shiny
And
new
you're
car
like,
somewhere.
It's gone.
oh, how convenient.
Yeah.
If it was that much money, I think I would pay an investigator.
Yeah, it's probably worth it.
Council, has this been valuable?
Yes,
Yes.
very.
All right.
Okay, so I think I know where. You're pretty clear on where we are, so I think we're good. Okay.
You ready?
I think the sales tax issue is still nothing new from the last report. Nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah, closed door meetings
Up
are
in the air.
happening, we
Yeah.
are not
Well,
privy to
like
this.
Carrie
Nobody
doesn't even
likes
know,
it.
when I
What
talked to her,
can
she
we
wasn't
do to get
clear
them
on what it
to
even
put a
was.
fire
What?
into that?
She
That's
knows
what I
about
want.
this. She
Cause,
knows
you know,
about
we even
this.
told ULCT that when we rejoined,
She talked
that
about
was our
last
number
year.
one issue. Get those kind of things taken care of so that we're not raiding our coffers, because that's money we need.
See, Carrie Ann was talking about it to me last year about how they wanted to broaden the tax base across the services, that was, the state was pretty much feeding them literature about this, and then now the bills come up. So the question is who is gonna be taxed?
And I don't like the idea that they're picking winners and losers. Quite frankly, I think that it all ought to be just across the board. The most simplified tax plans are the ones that are the most fair.
Yeah, and it's, yeah.
Fewer pages, the better.
It
Yep.
doesn't, there's nothing to react to right now, and other than just, the only thing to do proactively is just communicate that, hey, we're concerned about this.
How do they get away with closed door meetings when?
They have not actually met yet. This committee has not actually met to decide.
Oh, they've
things.
just had a lot
They've
of
had-
in-person meetings.
There's
Task
so many
forces.
exceptions for the legislature built in the open meetings
Oh
and,
my
and
gosh.
grandma acts that it's just, they have different rules. They can caucus, they can have lots.
And they're
that's
not a
another
quorum.
Discussion for another night.
Council, I'm gonna call the discussion on this and entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who needs to stay, Brody?
So, Noah and Krista and Robert, Chad. Who am I missing? And
Nice.
Steve. And Steve. Not so
Oh,
fast.
man.
Aaron gets to leave.
Not so fast.
Good night, Aaron.
Okay, council, we're in closed session. Watch Paul carefully.
Okay.